The blood-red sun cast long shadows across the dust, swept plains of Arizona territory, as Zara Ellis clutched her feverish 3-year-old daughter to her chest. Sweat beaded on her brow as she paced the weathered porch planks, her eyes fixed on the horizon where the rutted dirt road vanished into the gathering twilight. It was 1876, a hard year in a hard land, and for the past 8 months she had stood this same vigil every evening, waiting for a husband who would never return. "Just a little longer, Sophie," Zara whispered, brushing damp curls from her daughter's flushed face. "Then we'll go inside and get you cooled down," Sophie whimpered, her small body burning with a fever that had raged for 3 days now. The nearest doctor was in Tucson, a 2-day ride across open country teeming with dangers Zara couldn't face alone. With each passing hour, desperation clawed deeper into her heart. The sound of approaching hoofbeats made her freeze. Holding her breath, she squinted into the distance, where a lone rider materialized through the heat waves rippling off the parched earth. Her heart hammered in her chest as she instinctively stepped back toward the doorway, one hand reaching for the shotgun propped against the wall. As the rider drew closer, she could make out a lean man astride a dust-caked palomino. His face was shadowed beneath a wide-brimmed hat, but there was something in the set of his shoulders that didn't trigger immediate alarm. Still, in this unforgiving land, trust came at a steep price. "Evening, madam," the stranger called, stopping his horse a respectful distance from her porch. "Name's Ethan Xavier. I was hoping to water my horse if you'd be so kind." Zara's grip tightened on her daughter. "Water's around back. Help yourself, then be on your way." The man Ethan dismounted with a fluid grace that spoke of years in the saddle. As he stepped into the waning light, she could see his face clearly for the first time. Sun-weathered and framed by dark hair in need of a trim, his features were angular but not unkind. His eyes, a startling shade of green against his tanned skin, lingered on the child in her arms. "Your little one looks sick," he observed quietly. "She'll be fine," Zara replied too quickly, though her voice betrayed her fear. Ethan removed his hat, revealing a faded scar that ran along his temple. "I've some knowledge of fevers, madam. Picked it up during the war and after. May I?" Before she could respond, Sophie let out a weak cry that tore at Zara's heart. Desperation overwhelmed caution. "Please," she whispered, her proud facade crumbling. With gentle hands that belied his rugged appearance, Ethan touched Sophie's forehead, checked her pulse, and looked into her glassy eyes. "She needs willow bark tea and cool cloths," he said, "and probably some of the medicine I carry in my saddlebags. Nothing fancy, but it's helped many a trail hand through fevers worse than hers." Hope flickered in Zara's chest for the first time in days. "I can pay you," she said, though the lie tasted bitter on her tongue. The last of their money had gone for supplies weeks ago. A half-smile crossed his face. "I'm not asking for payment, madam." For the next hour, Ethan worked with quiet efficiency, brewing the bitter tea and coaxing Sophie to swallow small sips, while Zara bathed her daughter's limbs with cool water from the well. As the moon rose over the desert, Sophie's fever began to break, her tortured breathing easing into the gentle rhythm of sleep. "Thank you," Zara said, exhaustion evident in her voice as she sank into a chair beside her daughter's bed. Ethan nodded, gathering his supplies. "I should be going." "It's late," she found herself saying. "There's a lean-to behind the barn where you can bed down for the night." He hesitated, then nodded. "Much obliged." In the morning, Zara woke to the smell of coffee brewing. She found Ethan in her kitchen, frying salt pork in her cast-iron skillet while Sophie sat at the table, weak but alert, her fever gone. "Mama," Sophie called, her voice stronger than it had been in days. "Mr. Ethan's making breakfast." Ethan glanced up, something unreadable in his eyes. "Hope you don't mind. Seemed the least I could do before hitting the trail." "Not at all," Zara replied, trying to ignore how right it felt to have someone else moving about her kitchen after so many months of solitude. As they ate, Ethan kept conversation light, telling Sophie stories about his palomino, Sonny, that made the child giggle. It wasn't until Sophie went outside to feed scraps to the chickens that Zara noticed Ethan studying the homestead with a critical eye. "Your place looks like it could use some attention," he observed. Roof's got a bad patch, and that north fence line won't keep coyotes out much longer. Heat rose in Zara's cheeks. My husband built this place. He died last winter in a mining accident down in Bisbee. I've done what I can. Ethan's expression softened. I meant no offense, Mrs. Ellis, Zara Ellis, Mrs. Ellis. I only meant that it's a lot for one person to manage, especially with a young one. She lifted her chin. We get by. He set down his coffee cup with deliberation. I'm headed to California, but I'm in no particular hurry. I could stay a few days, help with those repairs. Suspicion flared. Why would you do that? Because it needs doing, he said simply. And because I've been drifting too long. Against her better judgment, Zara found herself nodding. 3 days, she said. Then you move on. 3 days stretched into a week as Ethan repaired the roof, mended fences, and reinforced the small corral where Zara kept her 2 milk cows and aging mule. Each evening, he'd sit on the porch with them after supper, carving small wooden animals for Sophie while sharing stories of his travels across the Western Territories. Zara learned he'd fought for the Union, survived a bullet to the head at Gettysburg that left him with occasional headaches and the scar on his temple, and afterward had worked as everything from a silver miner to a cattle driver. What he never spoke of was family or home, and Zara didn't press. Everyone in this harsh land carried wounds that went deeper than flesh. On the 8th day, as Ethan split firewood behind the house, Sophie tugged at Zara's skirts while she kneaded bread dough. Is Mr. Ethan staying forever, Mama? The child asked, her blue eyes so like her father's wide with hope. Zara's hands stilled. No, sweetheart, Mr. Ethan is just helping us for a little while. But I want him to stay, Sophie insisted. He tells the best stories, and he fixed my rocking horse, and he doesn't make you cry at night. Heat flooded Zara's face. She hadn't realized her daughter had heard her muffled sobs through the thin walls of their cabin. I don't cry anymore, she said softly, and realized with a start that it was true, not since Ethan had arrived. That evening, as Sophie slept, Zara found Ethan on the porch, staring at the road that stretched away from the homestead. You've done more than enough, she said, handing him a mug of coffee. I can't ask you to stay any longer. Ethan took the coffee, his fingers brushing hers. You haven't asked me for anything, Zara, not once. The use of her first name sent a ripple through her. He'd been carefully formal until now, always Mrs. Ellis in that low, gravelly voice. What are you running from, Ethan Xavier? She asked quietly. He looked at her then, really looked at her, and something in his gaze made her breath catch. Not running from, he corrected. Running to. I just didn't know what until I found this place. This place is nothing special, she said. Just a struggling homestead in the middle of nowhere. That's not what I see. He set down his coffee. I see a brave woman fighting against impossible odds. I see a child full of light despite what she's lost. I see. He trailed off, running a hand through his hair. I see a chance at something I thought wasn't meant for men like me. Before she could respond, the sound of approaching riders cut through the evening stillness. Ethan was on his feet in an instant, his hand moving to the revolver at his hip. Get inside, he said, his voice suddenly hard. Lock the door and get your shotgun. Ethan, what now, Zara? The urgency in his tone sent her hurrying inside. Through the window, she watched as 3 riders approached, their faces hidden beneath bandanas pulled high. Even in the gathering dusk, she could see the rifle each man carried. Evening, gentlemen, Ethan called, his posture relaxed despite the tension she could read in the set of his shoulders. Something I can help you with, the lead rider, a hulking man on a bay horse, leaned forward in his saddle. Well, I'll be damned, if it ain't Ethan Xavier himself. Ethan's stance shifted subtly. Do I know you, friend? The man pulled down his bandana, revealing a face bisected by a jagged scar. Laramie, Wyoming, 3 years back, you put a bullet in my brother. Zara's blood ran cold as she realized what was happening. She checked that Sophie was still asleep, then positioned herself by the window, shotgun ready. Outside, Ethan hadn't moved. Your brother was robbing the stage, shot the driver and a passenger. I was doing my job. Your job, the scarred man spat. You was a gun for hire, same as us. Just working for the other side. That was a long time ago, Ethan said evenly. I don't wear a badge anymore and I don't hire out my gun. I suggest you boys ride on. The scarred man laughed, an ugly sound. Oh, we'll ride on after we've settled our score. His hand moved toward his holster. What happened next was so fast Zara could barely follow it. Ethan drew and fired in one fluid motion. The scarred man tumbled from his saddle as his companions reached for their weapons. Two more shots rang out, and a second man fell. The third turned his horse and fled, dust billowing in his wake. Ethan stood motionless for a long moment, gun still raised, before holstering his weapon and approaching the fallen men. He checked each one, then dragged their bodies toward the barn, away from the house. When he returned to the porch, his face was shuttered, all warmth gone from his eyes. He didn't seem surprised to find Zara standing in the doorway, shotgun lowered but still in her hands. "I'll be gone by morning," he said quietly. "Who are you?" she whispered. He looked past her into the house where Sophie slept peacefully. "Someone who's done things he's not proud of." "I was a lawman for a while after the war, then a hired gun for the railroad, then a bounty hunter. I've been trying to put that life behind me. And those men, part of a gang I helped break up years ago, I didn't think anyone would track me here." His eyes met hers, filled with regret. "I'm sorry, Zara. I've put you and Sophie in danger." She should have been afraid, should have demanded he leave immediately. Instead, she found herself asking, "Were you ever going to tell me?" "Yes," he said without hesitation. "When I found the right words to explain that I'm not that man anymore." He gestured toward the barn. "But it seems I am. You protected us," she said, "and brought the danger to your door in the first place." He ran a hand over his face. "I'll bury them tonight, be gone before first light." Zara thought of the past week, of Sophie's laughter, of Ethan's steady presence, of the way the homestead no longer felt like a place of grief and struggle but of possibility. "What if I asked you to stay?" she said, surprising herself. Ethan went still. "You don't know what you're asking." "I know exactly what I'm asking," she countered. "I'm asking the man who saved my daughter's life, who fixed my roof and mended my fences, who makes Sophie laugh. I'm asking him to stay." "There could be others," he warned. "Then we'll face them together." She set down the shotgun and stepped closer to him. "I've been standing on this porch for 8 months, watching that road for someone who's never coming back. I'm tired of waiting, Ethan. I'm tired of being alone." Something changed in his expression, a flicker of hope so raw it made her heart ache. "I can't promise it will be safe," he said. "Nothing in this territory is safe," she replied, "but we'd have a better chance together than apart." He closed the distance between them, his calloused hand coming up to brush a strand of hair from her face. "Are you sure, Zara?" Instead of answering, she rose on tiptoe and pressed her lips to his. For a heartbeat, he remained motionless, and then his arms encircled her waist, drawing her against him as he deepened the kiss. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, the last of the walls between them had crumbled. "Stay," she whispered against his lips. "As long as you'll have me," he promised. The next morning, Zara found Ethan on the porch at dawn, staring down the road. 2 fresh graves lay behind the barn, marked with simple wooden crosses. "Expecting trouble?" she asked, handing him a cup of coffee. He took it with a nod of thanks. "Always best to be prepared." Sophie burst through the door, launching herself at Ethan with complete trust. "Morning, Mr. Ethan. Can we feed Sonny together?" Ethan's face softened as he scooped her up. "Of course we can, little one." As they headed toward the corral, Zara realized that for the first time since her husband's death, she wasn't watching the road with dread or longing. Instead, she was watching Ethan and Sophie, their heads bent together as he explained something about his horse's morning routine, and feeling something dangerously close to happiness. Over the next few weeks, they fell into a rhythm. Ethan rose before dawn each day to check the perimeter of the property before beginning the day's work. Zara tended her garden and chickens, while Sophie trailed after whichever adult would tolerate her endless questions. In the evenings, they sat together on the porch, watching the sunset paint the desert in gold and crimson. They didn't speak of love, though Zara felt it growing between them like the tender shoots of her garden after the rare desert rain. Each night, Ethan kissed her softly before retreating to the lean-to behind the barn, his restraint both frustrating and endearing. "He's a gentleman," Maggie Wheeler told Zara when she brought eggs to trade at the older woman's homestead 5 miles south. That's rare enough these days, especially for a man with his background. Zara paused in wrapping the bacon Maggie had offered in trade. His background, Maggie's weathered face creased in surprise. You don't know. Ethan Xavier was one of the most feared lawmen in the New Mexico territory before he hung up his badge. They called him the judge because he was judge, jury, and executioner all in one. That was years ago, Zara said defensively. He's different now. Maggie's expression softened. I'm sure he is, dear. Men like that either die young or find something worth living for. Seems like he's found his reason in you and that sweet girl of yours. She patted Zara's hand. Just be careful. Men with pasts like his, they cast long shadows. The warning stayed with Zara as she rode home, Sophie dozing against her in the saddle. Ethan met them at the corral, lifting Sophie down with gentle hands before helping Zara dismount. Everything all right at Maggie's? He asked, his eyes scanning her face with the perceptiveness that still sometimes unnerved her. Fine, she said, busying herself with unloading their trade goods. She said there's talk of a new silver strike near Tombstone, folks already streaming in. Ethan nodded, taking the bundle of bacon. More people means more trouble, generally speaking. Is that why you became a lawman? She asked, unable to help herself. To deal with trouble, his eyes narrowed slightly. Maggie's been telling tales, I see. She mentioned you had quite a reputation. Ethan sighed, running a hand through his hair, a gesture she now recognized as discomfort. I was a different man then, Zara. After the war, I was angry, looking for fights. Wearing a badge gave me an excuse to find them. He looked away. I did some good, brought in men who deserved bringing in, but I also did things I'm not proud of. Like what? She pressed. His jaw tightened. Like shooting men who might have surrendered if I'd given them the chance, like enjoying the fear in their eyes when they recognized me. He met her gaze squarely. I became what I was hunting, a man who solved problems with violence because it was easier than finding another way. She should have been repulsed, but instead found herself moved by his honesty. What changed? I shot a boy, he said quietly. Couldn't have been more than 16. Running with a bad crowd, but when I caught up to them, the others threw him to me like a scrap to a hungry dog while they escaped. He drew on me, but his hand was shaking so bad he couldn't have hit the broad side of a barn. Ethan swallowed hard. I shot him anyway. Didn't have to, but I did. Watched the light go out of his eyes and suddenly saw myself through his dying gaze. I didn't like what I'd become. Sophie's cheerful voice called from inside the house, breaking the heavy moment. That was then, Zara said firmly. This is now. Gratitude flooded his face. You're a rare woman, Zara Ellis. That night, as they sat on the porch watching stars pierce the velvety darkness one by one, Ethan spoke of his childhood in Missouri, of parents who died of cholera when he was 12, of an uncle who took him in but treated him more like hired help than family. He spoke of joining the Union Army at 18, of the friendships forged and lost in battle, of waking in a field hospital with half his memories gone, and the certainty that he'd used up whatever allotment of luck he'd been given in this life. After that, he said, I figured I was living on borrowed time, made it easy to take risks, to walk into situations most men would avoid. And now, Zara asked, her hand finding his in the darkness. He laced their fingers together. Now I find myself wanting time, as much of it as I can get. 2 days later, a dust cloud on the horizon announced visitors. Ethan spotted it first, his hand going instinctively to his gun as he called for Zara to take Sophie inside. Probably nothing, he said, though his expression belied his casual tone, but let's be cautious. As the riders drew closer, Zara watched through the window as tension visibly drained from Ethan's shoulders. 3 men in trail-worn clothes approached, led by a silver-haired man whose weathered face broke into a grin at the sight of Ethan. Marshal Brooks, Ethan called, stepping off the porch to greet them. What brings you this far from Tucson? The older man dismounted with a grunt. Looking for you, Xavier. Got word you might be in these parts. His sharp eyes swept over the homestead before returning to Ethan. Seems you've found yourself a nice situation. Ethan's posture remained relaxed, but Zara could see the wariness in his stance. Just lending a hand to a widow and her child. That what they're calling it these days, Brooks chuckled. Well, don't worry, I'm not here to drag you back to your old life. Just wanted to give you a warning. Ethan's expression darkened. What kind of warning? Brooks glanced toward the house. Might be better discussed in private. Anything you have to say can be said in front of Mrs. Ellis, Ethan replied firmly. This is her home. The marshal removed his hat, revealing a head of silver hair. Madam, he acknowledged with a nod. As I was about to tell your friend here, we've got word that Jasper Cole is out of prison. The name meant nothing to Zara, but Ethan's reaction was immediate. His entire body tensed, his face draining of color. That's not possible. He got 20 years. Early release for good behavior, Brooks said with disgust. And the first thing he did was start asking about the lawman who put him away. Cole was the leader of the gang those men who came here belonged to, Ethan explained to Zara, his voice tight. Most dangerous man I ever brought in. Killed 13 people that we know of, including 2 lawmen. And now he's looking for you, Brooks added. Thought you should know given your attachment here. His gaze lingered meaningfully on Zara. Ethan's expression hardened into something close to the dangerous man Maggie had described. Appreciated, Marshal, I'll handle it. Brooks replaced his hat. I figured you'd say that. Just so you know, I'll have men keeping an eye on the area. Cole's wanted in 3 territories now. If he shows his face, we'll have cause to bring him in. After the lawman departed, Ethan paced the porch like a caged animal, his expression remote. Zara waited until Sophie was occupied with her toys before confronting him. You're planning to leave, she said. It wasn't a question. Ethan stopped pacing. It's the only way to keep you and Sophie safe. Cole won't stop until he finds me, and when he does, he'll destroy anything I care about before coming after me. So your solution is to run, anger flared, hot and unexpected. To leave us unprotected, to draw the danger away from you, he corrected, his own temper rising to meet hers. This isn't about pride, Zara, it's about keeping you alive. And what about us? She demanded. What about what we've built here? His expression softened. Zara, these past weeks have been the happiest of my life, but I won't risk yours or Sophie's safety for my happiness. Shouldn't that be my choice? She stepped closer, laying a hand on his chest. I've lost one man I loved, Ethan. I won't lose another without a fight. He went still beneath her touch. You love me. Of course I do, you fool, she whispered. And I know you love us too. So stop planning to leave and start planning how we fight this together. For a long moment, he stared at her, a battle raging behind his eyes. Then he cupped her face in his hands and kissed her with a desperate intensity that left her breathless. I love you, he said against her lips. God help me. I love you both so much it terrifies me. That night, for the first time, Ethan didn't retreat to the lean-to. Instead, after Sophie was asleep, he and Zara came together with all the passion and tenderness that had been building between them. Afterward, as they lay tangled in her narrow bed, he traced the curve of her shoulder with gentle fingers. I won't leave, he promised, but we need to be ready. For the next week, Ethan transformed their homestead into a fortress. He reinforced doors and windows, created hidden caches of weapons and supplies, and taught Zara to shoot his revolver with deadly accuracy. Each night, they took turns standing watch, though no threat materialized. It was on a brilliant autumn morning, with the desert blooming improbably after a rare rainfall, that Sophie spotted riders approaching from the east the opposite direction from town. Mama, look, she called from her perch on the corral fence. People are coming. Ethan was beside Zara in an instant, a spyglass raised to his eye. What he saw made him lower it slowly, his expression grim. 4 riders, he said, and the one in front is Jasper Cole. Fear clawed at Zara's throat. Sophie, come here right now, she called, her voice steady despite her racing heart. As her daughter ran to her side, Ethan knelt to look Sophie in the eye. Remember our hiding place, the special one under the floorboards in the root cellar? Sophie nodded solemnly. At 4, she understood danger in the way all frontier children must. I need you to go there now, Ethan continued. Take Mr. Bear and be very quiet until Mama or I come for you. Can you do that? Will the bad men hurt you? Sophie asked, her lower lip trembling. Ethan brushed a thumb across her cheek. Not if I can help it, little one. Now go, quickly. Once Sophie was safely hidden, Ethan handed Zara his spare revolver. Stay inside, away from the windows. If anything happens to me, nothing is going to happen to you, she interrupted fiercely. He smiled, though it didn't reach his eyes. If it does, don't hesitate. Shoot to kill, then take Sophie and ride for the Wheeler place. Maggie will help you get to Tucson. Before she could argue further, he kissed her hard and strode onto the porch, closing the door firmly behind him. Through the window, Zara watched as he stood tall and straight, awaiting the approaching riders with the calm of a man who had faced death many times before. The riders stopped a short distance from the house. The leader, a powerfully built man with a shock of white blonde hair, dismounted and approached alone, stopping at the foot of the porch steps. "Ethan Xavier," he called, his voice carrying clearly through the closed door. "Been a long time." "Not long enough, Cole," Ethan replied, his hand resting casually near his holster. "You're trespassing on private property." Cole laughed, an oddly musical sound from such a menacing figure. "That's rich coming from you, settling down on another man's land, sleeping in another man's bed. Tell me, does the widow know what kind of monster she's taken in? Say your piece and get off this land," Ethan said, his voice hardening. "My piece?" Cole spread his hands in a mockery of innocence. "I just came to return a favor. You took 8 years of my life, Xavier. Seems only fair I take something precious from you in return. You killed 13 people, Cole. You got off easy with 8 years. Cole's false smile vanished. "And I'll kill 13 more before I'm done, starting with you and that pretty little family you've made for yourself." Zara saw Ethan's shoulders tense, though his voice remained steady. "You want me, Cole, leave the woman and child out of it. That's not how this works, and you know it." Cole's hand drifted toward his gun. "You took my brother when you took me in, shot him down right in front of me. Now I'm going to make you watch," He never finished the sentence. Ethan drew and fired in one lightning-fast motion, catching Cole in the shoulder and spinning him backward. The 3 men behind Cole immediately opened fire, forcing Ethan to dive for cover as bullets splintered the porch railing. Zara crouched below the window, heart pounding as she checked the revolver Ethan had given her. 6 bullets, she thought. Make them count. Outside, the gunfire had stopped. She risked a glance through the window to see Cole staggering to his feet, blood staining his shirt, while his men spread out to surround the house. "You've gotten slow, Xavier," Cole shouted, rage making his voice tremble. "Or maybe you're just soft now, playing house with your whore and her brat." A shot rang out, and one of Cole's men dropped. Ethan had repositioned himself at the corner of the house, using it for cover as he fired again, catching a second man in the leg. Zara watched in horror as the third man circled toward the back of the house. Without hesitation, she moved to the rear window, took careful aim as Ethan had taught her, and fired. The man cried out, clutching his arm, but kept coming. She fired again, and this time he fell. Outside, Cole was shouting orders to his remaining able-bodied man. "Burn them out. Burn the whole damn place down." Time seemed to slow as Zara saw the man light a torch and approach the barn. If the fire spread to the house, Sophie would be trapped in her hiding place. Without thinking, she flung open the door and fired her last 2 bullets, missing in her haste but drawing the man's attention away from the barn. "Zara, get down," Ethan shouted, but it was too late. Cole had spotted her. With a triumphant grin, he raised his gun. Ethan burst from cover, firing desperately as he ran toward her. Cole's shot went wild as Ethan's bullet found his chest, driving him backward. For a moment, the outlaw remained upright, a look of stunned disbelief on his face, before collapsing in the dust. The remaining gang member threw down his torch and raised his hands in surrender. In the sudden silence, Zara could hear her own ragged breathing as Ethan approached Cole's body, gun still trained on the fallen outlaw. "Is he?" "She began. Dead," Ethan confirmed, his voice hollow. He turned to face her, and the mask of the hardened gunman fell away, revealing raw fear. "Are you hurt?" She shook her head. Sophie, before she could finish, Ethan was striding toward her, gathering her in his arms with such force it drove the breath from her lungs. "Don't ever do that again," he said fiercely against her hair. "I thought when I saw you step outside, I couldn't let them burn the barn," she whispered. Sophie was in the root cellar. He pulled back, framing her face with his hands. "I know, but if anything happened to you..." He couldn't finish, emotion choking his voice. "Nothing happened," she assured him. "We're safe now." The sound of approaching horses interrupted them. Marshal Brooks and his deputies crested the rise, taking in the scene with practiced eyes. "Seems we're a bit late to the party," Brooks observed, dismounting. "Cole," Ethan nodded toward the body. "Won't be bothering anyone again." Brooks surveyed the carnage with a grunt of satisfaction. "Good riddance. Any of your people hurt?" "We're fine," Ethan said, his arm still around Zara's waist, the marshal's weathered face creased in a smile. "Glad to hear it." He gestured to his deputies to secure the surviving outlaw. "We'll take care of the cleanup. You folks should see to your little girl." As the lawmen set about their grim task, Ethan and Zara retrieved Sophie from her hiding place. The child launched herself into Ethan's arms, burying her face against his neck. "You got the bad men," she said, her voice muffled. "Yes, little one," he murmured, holding her close. "The bad men are gone, and they won't be coming back." That night, after Sophie had finally fallen asleep between them in the big bed, exhausted from the day's excitement, Ethan traced the curve of Zara's cheek with a gentle finger. "I never thought I'd have this," he confessed softly. "A home, a family, a life worth living. And now," she asked, his eyes warm in the lamplight met hers, "now I'm wondering if you'd consider making it official." Her heart stuttered. "Are you asking me to marry you, Ethan Xavier?" A smile tugged at his lips. "I believe I am, Zara Ellis." "Not exactly the romantic proposal you deserve, with a child between us and the smell of gunpowder still in the air," but she silenced him with a kiss. "It's perfect," she whispered against his lips. "And yes, I'll marry you." 2 weeks later, they stood before the circuit riding preacher in Maggie Wheeler's front room, Sophie serving as their only attendant as they exchanged simple vows. Ethan had traded 2 of his prized horses for a delicate gold ring that now encircled Zara's finger, catching the light whenever she moved her hand. As autumn gave way to winter, they settled into a new rhythm. Ethan's reputation ensured they were left in peace, though occasionally someone would arrive seeking the legendary lawman's help with some problem or other. Most times, Ethan would listen, offer advice, and send them on their way. But sometimes, when the cause was just, he would ride out for a day or two, returning with quiet satisfaction in his eyes and once with a lost child restored to grateful parents. "You miss it, don't you?" Zara asked one evening as they sat on the porch, watching Sophie chase fireflies in the gathering dusk. Being a lawman, Ethan considered her question, his arm warm around her shoulders. "I miss helping people," he admitted, "but not the killing, not the fear I saw in men's eyes." He pressed a kiss to her temple. "And nothing compares to coming home to you two." Spring brought new life to the homestead. The garden thrived under Zara's care. The small herd of cattle Ethan had acquired grew steadily, and Sophie blossomed like the wildflowers that carpeted the desert after the winter rains. And with the changing season came another change, Zara's suspicion, confirmed by Maggie's knowing smile that their family would grow by one come winter. When she told Ethan, his reaction surprised her. This man who had faced down the most dangerous outlaws without flinching paled at her news, then sat down abruptly on the edge of their bed. "A baby," he repeated, his voice faint. "Are you sure?" Worry creased her brow. "I thought you'd be pleased." He looked up at her, his expression transforming into one of such wonder it made her breath catch. "Zara, I don't have words for what I am." He reached for her hands, drawing her toward him. "I never thought I'd be a father. With Sophie, I came into her life when she already knew how to walk and talk and think, but a baby." He pressed his face against her still flat stomach. "A little person we made together." Tears pricked her eyes as she threaded her fingers through his hair. "You're already a wonderful father to Sophie. She makes it easy," he said, looking up at her with damp eyes. "She loved me from the start, God knows why. Because she recognized what I took longer to see," Zara said softly. "That beneath all that grim exterior beats the heart of a good man." As summer heat baked the land, Zara's belly swelled with new life. Sophie appointed herself guardian of her mother's health, solemnly reporting to Ethan if Zara tried to do too much. For his part, Ethan treated Zara as though she were made of the finest porcelain, a tendency that both touched and exasperated her. "I'm pregnant, not dying." she told him one evening after he'd insisted on carrying a basket of laundry that weighed less than the buckets of water she routinely hauled from the well. He grinned, unrepentant. "Humor me, I've waited a lifetime to fuss over a woman carrying my child." She couldn't argue with that, especially when his protectiveness extended to other, more pleasurable attentions. As her body changed, Ethan's desire for her only seemed to grow, his reverence for her swollen form expressed in tender caresses that left her breathless and wanting. In the heat of July, Marshall Brooks paid them an unexpected visit, bringing news that a town was forming 20 miles to the south, near the new silver strike. "They're looking for a sheriff," he told Ethan as they shared coffee on the porch. "Someone who knows the territory and commands respect." "I may have mentioned your name," Ethan's brow furrowed. "I hung up my badge, Marshall. I have other priorities now." Brooks nodded toward Zara, who sat nearby, her hands resting on her rounded belly. "I can see that, but this isn't like before, Xavier. This is about building something, not just hunting men down. The mine owners want someone who can keep order without bloodshed, someone the decent folks can trust." He sipped his coffee. "The pay's good, and there'd be a proper house in town for your family." "We have a home," Ethan said, though Zara detected a hint of interest in his voice. "Think about it," Brooks said, rising to leave. "Town's called Silver Springs. Growing faster than weeds after a rain, they need good people to shape what it becomes." After the marshal departed, Zara found Ethan checking the south pasture fence, his movements distracted. "You want to consider it, don't you?" she asked, shielding her eyes from the sun. He glanced at her, then back at the fence post he was securing. "It doesn't matter. We're settled here." "Ethan," she waited until he looked at her fully. "This is your home as much as mine now. If you want to explore this opportunity, we should discuss it." He drove the last nail into the post with more force than necessary. "A sheriff's job is dangerous, Zara. I've put you and Sophie in enough danger already." From what Marshall Brooks said, this would be different, a chance to prevent trouble, not just respond to it. She moved closer, taking his hand. "And a proper house in town would mean a doctor nearby when the baby comes." Something flickered in his eyes, fear, she realized. Fear of losing her in childbirth as so many frontier women were lost. "I won't make any decisions without talking to you first," he promised, squeezing her hand. "But maybe we could ride down, take a look at this Silver Springs before the baby comes." 3 weeks later, they crested a hill to see Silver Springs spread before them, a bustling collection of buildings surrounding a natural spring that gleamed silver in the sunlight. Unlike many mining towns, which grew haphazardly, Silver Springs showed signs of planning. Wide streets, substantial buildings, and most surprisingly, trees planted along the main thoroughfare. "It's beautiful," Zara breathed, adjusting Sophie on the saddle in front of her. Ethan nodded, his expression thoughtful. "Looks like someone's putting money into making this place last beyond the silver." They were met at the town's edge by a delegation led by a distinguished-looking man who introduced himself as Howard Mitchell, representative of the Silver Springs Mining Company. "Marshall Brooks told us you might be coming," Mitchell said, shaking Ethan's hand firmly. "We're honored, Mr. Xavier. Your reputation precedes you." "Not all of that reputation is flattering," Ethan replied bluntly. Mitchell's smile didn't waver. "We're not looking for a saint, Mr. Xavier. We're looking for a man who can keep the peace without unnecessary bloodshed. A man who understands that a town is only as good as the people who build it." As they toured the town, Zara was struck by the number of families already settled there. Women nodded greetings, children played in the streets, and men tipped their hats respectfully as they passed. There was a school under construction, a church nearly completed, and most importantly a doctor's office staffed by a competent-looking woman physician from back east. The house Mitchell showed them was beyond anything Zara had imagined. 2 stories with glass windows, a proper kitchen with a pump indoors, and enough bedrooms for their growing family. Sophie ran from room to room in wonder, her excitement infectious. "What do you think?" Ethan asked Zara quietly as Mitchell gave them a moment alone. She looked around the sunlit parlor, trying to imagine their life here. "It's not our homestead," she said honestly, "but it could be a wonderful home for our children. And for us," he pressed. She studied his face, seeing the spark that had been missing in recent months, the sense of purpose that defined him. "You want this job," she realized. "Only if you want this life," he replied. "I won't uproot you and Sophie unless you're certain." Zara thought of the lonely months she'd spent at the homestead before Ethan arrived, of the isolation that would only increase once winter came, and the baby with it. She thought of Sophie growing up with other children, of having a doctor minutes away instead of days, of Ethan using his skills to build rather than destroy. "Let's do it," she said, her decision crystallizing. "Let's make a new start here." The relief and joy that washed over his face told her she'd made the right choice. They moved to Silver Springs in August, giving them time to settle before the baby's arrival. Ethan threw himself into his new role with characteristic thoroughness, establishing clear rules and expectations that earned him the respect of even the rowdiest minors. Zara found herself welcomed into the small but growing community of wives and mothers, her knowledge of frontier living valued among women more recently arrived from eastern cities. Sophie started school, coming home each day bursting with new knowledge and friendships. The house gradually transformed from an empty shell to a home filled with the furniture Ethan commissioned from the town's carpenter, and the curtains and quilts Zara created with fabric ordered from the new mercantile. As her time drew near, Zara found herself increasingly grateful for Dr. Elizabeth Bennet's calm presence and practical advice. The young physician had come west after the war left her a widow, determined to use her medical training where it was most needed. "You're healthy as a horse," Dr. Bennet assured her during a checkup in early December. "This baby will come into the world just fine, Mrs. Xavier." On the winter solstice, with snow dusting the mountains visible from their bedroom window, Zara's labor began. Ethan sent the town's young deputy to fetch Dr. Bennet, while Maggie Wheeler, who had followed them to Silver Springs to open a bakery, arrived to care for Sophie. Unlike Sophie's birth, which had been long and difficult with only a neighbor woman to help, this labor progressed smoothly under Dr. Bennet's capable guidance. Ethan refused to leave Zara's side, holding her hand through each contraction and murmuring encouragement when her strength flagged. As dawn broke over the mountains, their son entered the world with a lusty cry that brought tears to Ethan's eyes. "Doctor." Bennet placed the squalling infant on Zara's chest, where he immediately quieted, his unfocused gaze seeming to search for his father's face. "He's perfect," Ethan whispered, one finger tracing the curve of his son's tiny cheek, "just like his mother." They named him William, after Zara's father, with Robert as his middle name to honor the brother Ethan had lost at Gettysburg. Sophie was enchanted with her baby brother, appointing herself his special protector and insisting on helping with his care. As winter gave way to spring, Silver Springs continued to grow. The mines produced steady yields, attracting more families and businesses. Ethan's reputation spread as a fair but firm sheriff who managed to keep order without resorting to the violence of his past. One evening in April, as they sat on the porch of their home watching Sophie chase fireflies while baby William slept in Zara's arms, Ethan took her free hand in his. "I never thought I'd have this," he said softly, echoing words he'd spoken on another porch in another life. "A woman who knows the worst of me and loves me anyway. Children who look at me like I hang the moon, a purpose that builds instead of destroys." Zara leaned into his solid warmth. "And I never thought I'd find love again after losing Thomas. Never thought I'd stop watching that lonely road, waiting for something that could never come back." She pressed a kiss to his scarred temple. "But then you came along, and everything changed." Ethan's arm tightened around her shoulders as they watched Sophie dance in the gathering twilight. "Do you remember what I said to you that first day, when you were standing on your porch, waiting for help that never seemed to come?" She smiled at the memory. "You said I'd never watch the road alone again." "Best promise I ever made," he murmured, dropping a kiss on William's downy head before capturing Zara's lips in a tender kiss. "And one I intend to keep for the rest of our days." As the stars emerged one by one in the darkening sky, lighting the path home for their daughter, Zara knew with bone-deep certainty that she would never again stand alone, watching and waiting. Whatever roads stretched before them, whatever joys and sorrows, triumphs and challenges the future might hold, they would face them together. A family forged not by blood but by choice, by love, and by the courage to believe in second chances.